On the night of Sunday, October 31st, 1976, Tony Barron was doing his job guarding a warehouse. It was exactly 10:45 when he decided to take a break and went up to the roof with his cigarette and a cup of coffee. The watchman sat in the fresh air under the full moon and contemplated the distant city and the moonlit streets. Then, his eyes fell on a school about 100 yards from the warehouse. He saw two girls with long hair about the same age, estimated to be between 16 years old and 18, were running in the schoolyard while he was watching them. Suddenly, the two girls disappeared. Tony was shocked, and the cigarette fell out of his coffee cup. But he kept staring at the playground. Maybe the young ghosts would reappear, but they didn't. Feeling uncomfortable, Tony returned to the warehouse through a door in the ceiling. Tony did not believe in ghosts, but he could not find any explanation for what he had seen a little earlier. It was definitely not a hoax or a hallucination. The guard telephoned his old Uncle Stan Jones, a retired policeman, to tell him about the strange scene he had just witnessed. After the uncle heard the story, he asked his nephew, "Have you not read the news lately?" Here Tony told him that he just read the sports pages in the newspapers. Tony asked his uncle, "Why are you asking, Uncle? And what did this have to do with what I saw?" Stan replied, "About a week ago, there was a news in the newspapers about the death of two sisters in a car accident in Bolton. They were only 15 years old. The accident occurred while returning from the school near which you work." And Tony said strangely, "You're kidding." Tony felt a sudden chill sweep through his entire body, but he let his uncle continue his conversation, which increased Tony's tension when Uncle told him about a strange experience he himself had 11 years ago in the warehouse that Tony is now guarding. Uncle Stan said to him, "Around 1965, I don't remember the exact day, but it was in October, when the old guard of the warehouse at that time invited me to have a cup of tea. He was my friend. After we sat together inside the warehouse, he gave me tea and a sandwich, and then went to the toilet at the other end of the building. At the time, I wasn't one of the people who believed in ghosts and the paranormal. But when the guard went, something happened that stayed in my mind for years. Maybe I shouldn't tell you what happened so it doesn't get stuck in your mind either." Tony didn't know if he really wanted to hear the rest of the story or not, but in the end, he asked his uncle to complete the story. "Go on. I'm not scared, Uncle Stan," said Tony, watching the moon through the warehouse windows and anxiously watching the schoolyard. Uncle continued, "After the guard went to the bathroom, I suddenly felt so cold in the place that steam was coming out of my mouth. And then, I had this scary feeling that there really was something next to me." At this moment, Tony felt scared and asked his uncle to explain the most what had happened. Stan stopped talking for a moment and then continued. "It's hard to explain. It's a situation like the one where people feel that they are being watched, or that there are eyes looking at them, so I became really scared of that place. Then I saw something." "Are you sure you're not scared, Tony?" Tony said. "A little, but my curiosity overcame my fear. Go on, Uncle." Uncle Stan continued. "I looked here and there and saw 3 or 4 objects. I don't remember the exact number, but they looked like human bodies. all covered with white sheets, and they were lying on the floor in a dark corner of the room. I stayed there, steady, until the guard came again, and I pointed him towards them and asked him, "What are those covered things there?" But they suddenly disappeared before he turned around. Tony asked, "Hey, what did the guard do next?" Stan replied, "Although he didn't see them this time, he told me that they had appeared to him several times before during his years working in this place, so he used to see them." Tony felt strange about what was happening, and at that moment, he had a strange feeling that something was near him, but he ignored his feeling and tried to distract his mind by talking to his uncle. Uncle Stan asked, "Do you know what the guard said to me at the time?" Tony replied, "No, what did he say?" Uncle Stan told him the story of the warehouse and said, "He said that the warehouse was built on land that was above a morgue a long time ago." Here the connection was suddenly interrupted, and Tony felt with his hair standing up and that something or someone was approaching him from behind. Then, Tony smelled an unpleasant smell in the place. Then something more happened. Something cold touched the back of his head. The guard Tony ran as fast as he could towards the main door of the warehouse, opened it, then continued to run to the street and did not stop until he reached his uncle's house, which was closer to his home to the warehouse. After his arrival, he told his uncle what had happened before his escape and after the line was disconnected. His uncle asked him, "Is that why you hung up the phone?" Tony replied, "No, I didn't close it. I thought you were the one who hung up." And then the shock was when Stan said to him, "That's weird, I was worried about you, so I called again. And then an almost crazy woman answered me and said to me, 'Tony left, and that's what he should have done.' And then she started laughing hysterically." Tony replied, "But there was no one in the warehouse." A year later, Tony was sitting in one of the bars when he accidentally met a man and found out that he worked for 3 years in the same warehouse where Tony worked. The man said that he quit work because of a scary incident that happened to him when he fell asleep while working one night. When he woke up, he found an evil-looking woman in a long white dress. She was standing over his head smiling. Her face was as white as paper, and her eyes were yellowish with black shadows surrounding them. There was also a disgusting smell like the smell of body decomposition. Seconds later, the woman was gone and the stench quickly faded. If you are a fan of horror stories, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.